Hey everybody, and welcome to my little review for Ghost of Tsushima. I picked this game up not quite knowing anything about the gameplay. I avoided it like I usually do with a lot of the games I pick up. And I have to say that I've only played the opening few hours so far. So the first half of this review is just going to be first impressions, and then I'll sort of give my final verdict then at the end after I finish the game. But in terms of first impressions, I've written down a few notes here. So first of all, the game looks amazing. It looks great. Like in the opening few hours I've played, there has been no frame rate drops, no glitches, anything like that. It's run really, really smoothly. I've also noticed there's a few different modes. Now I've only played the one mode, which is the English regular mode, I guess you could call it. So it's got, and it's also got like subtitles on, English subtitles, but there is a mode that basically has the audio in Japanese, which sounds interesting, and there's also a mode called Kurosawa mode, where the game is basically black and white, looks like an old film with Japanese audio, and you can have English subtitles. When I complete the game, I'm hoping to actually go through it. I'm hoping there's like a new Game Plus mode at the end, so I can go through the Kurosawa mode without having to do all the side stuff as well. I can just breeze through the campaign with that sort of filter on. So yeah, I'm looking forward to trying that out. The game is sort of like a mix. So you got ranged weapons, so bow and arrow and so on, and you've also got the sword. But I feel the actual melee combat is the meat of the game. Then is the main focus of the game. It's definitely the one they've put more thought into, like the most thought into, I'd say, and it shows because it is very responsive. Like, it's all to do with timing, how you parry attacks and counter attacks, and there's different stances you can use. So there's like the moon stance, the stone stance, and stone stance, and all of them basically counter different enemy types. So I think the stone stance, it counters swordmen. You've got the moon stance, which counters brutes, and there's one for shields and pikemen and so on. So yeah, that's very interesting. How you can sort of swap between the stances on the fly, in between like during a sword fight, if you're fighting various opponents. And there's also variations on armor, from what I've seen, which is pretty interesting. So there's quite a few variations on armor, different armor sets. Each of them have different skills, bonuses, whatever you want to call them, that will sort of enforce your playstyle or reinforce your playstyle. So I haven't really noticed a big difference wearing them though. And in how I'm fighting and bonuses they're giving me or whatnot, I haven't really noticed, I have to say, which is kind of disappointing. But if any of you have played them, if any of you have played it and you've noticed the difference, please throw down in the comments. I'll gladly hear from you. But I haven't noticed any sort of real difference in changing armor sets. I haven't seen it. It hasn't affected how I've played the game then, which is a bit weird, because it looks like that's how the whole armor thing is built. Like, around the idea that it will help you in your chosen playstyle. So there's one for like stealth, there's one for exploration, there's one for actual fighting. I think there's one for more ranged weaponry and so on. But yeah, I just choose whichever one looks best on me, because I'm vain. The game's open world, and it's actually a pretty decent open world. It's pretty big, so they do all do whole open world things. So there's stuff, collectibles to get. I don't think I'm going to bother with those myself, because that will just drive me mad. There's places to liberate from the Mongols. There's pieces of vanity gear, So stuff like headbands and hats and masks and whatnot that you can go around the island collecting. And unlike in other games where there's sort of like a GPS then, or like a guide or something visual, like, something to actually like put a line between you and your destination, in Ghost of Tsushima there is it's something called the guiding wind, which is basically the breeze, the wind direction guides you to your destination, which I think is a phenomenal idea and really works well with the game. The only issue I had with it was there's for example, there's a bit of vanity gear sort of stuck on the top of a lighthouse, and the guiding wind will just tell you to go to the lighthouse, not up, not down. It'll just tell you to go to the lighthouse. And I spent about 20 minutes just running around that lighthouse trying to figure out what it was I was supposed to do. I had to look online, and it told me that the vanity gear is right at the top, so you get like climbing, something to help you climb later on, I'm guessing. That's the only issue I had with that mechanic, so that's a problem. And that also brings me on to another thing I've written down in my notes. The climbing. The climbing's pretty straightforward. It's not Assassin's Creed level climbing. You will only have to climb at certain points. So there's like there'll be a noticeable ledge or something that you can climb up. That's fine. It works alright in the game. It doesn't sort of cause any issues. And they said if you have to climb, you'll know it because it'll be quite obvious as to the ledges and so on. At the beginning of the game, you have to choose a horse, and you have to choose the name for the horse. Now, I haven't quite figured out what that means, like what effect that has on the game, or if it has any effect, or if it's just one of those arbitrary choices you can make which don't really affect you or anything else. I have no idea, but hopefully that'll become clear at some point. If not, I'll be trying to look up online or something. And yeah, so all of your swords, your weapons, your armor can all be upgraded as well. Now, the actual upgrade costs are pretty steep, which is a bit off-putting. And you have to collect these things called supplies, which I assume is like food and whatnot that you barter with other people, which you can barter with, which you can use to barter. There you go, use to barter with other people. And yeah, they come in like 16, 8, 3, 2, weird sort of random amounts, and sometimes you'll need something like 750 to like 1,000 to upgrade your armor, so that can be quite slow, I think. So they really do want you to sort of focus on a playstyle and focus on an armor set that aids in that playstyle, I think, from the get-go. So yeah, that's the other problem I'm having, but I'm basically just upgrading armor willy-nilly as I go along, because I'm changing how I play pretty much all the time, which I don't think it meant to. But yeah, those are my pretty much first impressions of the game. Okay guys, so it took me about a week to complete Ghost of Tsushima, and at the start I just want to talk about the story for a bit. I found it to be very plain. No two ways about it. There wasn't too much in the way of plot twists or anything. I got the feeling it was more about the journey rather than where it led. Because when I got to about the half point, I kind of guessed where the story was going and how it was going to end, and for the most part, I was pretty much spot on. But I assume it's more about the journey. I don't know, not sure. The journey wasn't, I would say, wasn't particularly interesting myself, but the gameplay was fun. I'd say that much. The combat was alright. It's pretty much the same, I would say, from the first 2 hours. You have you basically kill leaders, you unlock different stances, you use your points to get different abilities and perks and so on. And yeah, that's pretty much it. But throughout the rest of the game, like, they don't really add anything later on, which I always thought was a bit weird when I was going through the game. So basically, you get 4 stances, and combat you can do your own thing, I suppose. You can have your own strategies and develop them. But for me, it was basically just brute forcing through every encounter I came across. And when you get to the end, you get so strong enough, you can kind of use any stance near enough on any of the bad guys. You can basically use the stance you get at the beginning, the stone stance or whatever it's called, to use in every encounter, and it would work. Like, you can use the others, it'll make it a bit easier, but if you can't be bothered to remember what stance is best used against what stance is best used against what opponent, so spear, shield, and big bastards, you can kind of just use the base one that's best used against swords for everything, and you can do it. You can get through to the end. It's really weird. I thought that would have been more prominent as the game went on, but I found it wasn't. The armor, like I said in the beginning, didn't really make a difference. Further into the game you get, for me, I was just basically choosing whichever armor looked nice, or I like the look of. Not really concerned about what advantages it offered me, like stats wise or whatever. So I just went with the ghost armor, which is I believe more of a stealth armor set, and bizarrely I didn't do any stealth in the game, because the stealth is very odd in this, because you can use it as much as you like. You can sort of hide in the bushes, take out guards silently, etc. Or you can just do what I did and just brute force your way through everything. And I found that to be a bit odd for the game, because the game, Ghost of Tsushima, it kind of has that sort of stealth, implication to it. But yeah, you can just brute force your way through pretty much anything. But you do get those weird missions every now and then that's like, you have to do stealth. Not weird, I suppose. They sort of fit into the story, but that's the only parts where the stealth actually become prominent, is when you're forced to do it. Like, I never chose to do it by myself. There are probably challenges and trophies that, if you want to get them, you'd have to do something more stealthy than brute force. But yeah, I found that to be a bit weird. I thought it would be more prominent, more necessary than it actually was. Combat. Pretty much talked about combat, haven't I? Sorry, I'm going through my notes in front of me. Climbing was fun. It was simple, straightforward, but very underused. So, like, I could probably count, using my hands, how many times I actually needed to climb in this game. And the iron hook. So you spend a lot of the time in the start of the game trying to get that iron hook. And when you get it, you use it again to the Castle Canada at the start of the game. And it's kind of used sparingly throughout then. Like, I thought you'd be using it to, like, rappel down mountains or something. You could use it to something like that. But it's used very sparingly afterwards. Which I always thought was a bit weird, because you spend so much time trying to get it. And you also need it to get some of the collectibles, which the game doesn't actually tell you. And that's very confusing. But that's pretty much it. You're just getting the iron hook for collectibles and the odd story part here and there, like when you do a mission. But I thought it would be more prominent, Like, you could use it as you're exploring, sort of rappel down, like I mentioned, but nothing. The open world aspect as well, the further on into the game you do get to sort of see different biomes. The second part, because basically it's split into 3 chapters, the entire game, and 3 areas of the map. So the first one is kind of more occupied, I think, because it's a bit smaller. The second one is by far the largest, and probably the most open, so you explore that for quite a bit if you want to, and there's plenty of missions and side quests, etc, etc. And then you get to the third one, and you sort of enter this sort of snowy area, which looks amazing. Like, the whole game looks amazing, but the snowy area looked particularly nice because I kind of like that environment in video games when it's done well. And yeah, that was nice. The actual world and how everything looked, and the guiding wind mechanic really sort of made the world seem a bit more vibrant then, I guess, when it's sort of everything's just sort of blowing around you, like the particle effects of like the leaves, etc. So yeah, all that stuff I really did enjoy. And the horse, when you choose your horse and name at the start, that didn't seem, not that I noticed. I mean, if anyone noticed sort of how it affected the game, by all means throw it in the comments, because I'd love to hear from you. But from what I could tell, it was just like your character, just the Jin, just saying the different names. Like there wasn't, it was not, I can't even get my words out. Like I'm trying to sort of rationalise the sort of my thought process here, but it wasn't like Skyrim, where one horse is like bigger, one horse is like quicker or something. From this, they all looked the same, just different colours. Like physically they all looked the same. There was just different colours. Like there was no sort of stat increase or advantage for choosing one or the other. Same with the names. It just seemed really odd. Like they were trying to just do their best to maybe personalise this aspect of the game. Which there is a point later on where something happens to the horse, and don't get me wrong, I know I teared up at that bit because it was heartbreaking. But I thought there'd be more of a gameplay mechanic to it, considering like the scene I mentioned with the horse doesn't happen until much later into the game, like towards the beginning of the third act. So you're with that horse for a while. So I'd have thought there would have been like a gameplay advantage, something to push your like decision choice, weigh something up. But no, you just choose the horse, choose the name, and that's it. Like nothing else happens. Yeah, so those are basically the main points of the game that I wanted to talk about. Because the overall, I recommend the game. I'd give it a high rating. I'd say maybe about 8 out of 10. I know it's been sort of reviewed as probably the best game of the generation or something close to that, because I've seen a lot of articles saying as such. I wouldn't call it the best game of the generation myself. I think maybe Horizon Zero Dawn still holds that title, but I would say this is definitely worth checking out if you're interested in what you've seen of the game. If you haven't seen anything, then you're watching the wrong video, and you should be checking out the walkthrough I've done. At least part 1, which is where the footage of this video is taken from, the opening of the first part, so do check that out if you haven't. But yeah, I'd highly recommend grabbing it. It took me a week to finish, so time-wise it definitely hits the mark there. It's worth the money. And I think recently they've announced a co-op mode that will be coming out at some point between now and the end of the year. So there's always that to look forward to. So they are adding stuff to the game, which you don't usually see with some PlayStation exclusives. This is getting a co-op mode. Spider-Man got a couple of DLC packs, but Days Gone didn't get anything except a few random updates that had like challenges in game or whatever. So it's good to see that they're adding stuff to this, and they're keeping it keeping content flowing for it for a bit. But yeah, that's pretty much my review. I have prattled on for near enough 20 minutes, so thank you all for watching this. It means a lot. If you could leave a like, leave a comment down below, and let me know what you think of the game if you've played it, or if you want to play it and haven't done so already. Throw down in the comment section why, like what's attracted you to this game, why you think it's interesting, or why it's interested you, because I'd love to hear about all that. For me, it was mainly because it looked cool and looked like good fun, which it was, so it's a win-win. Again, I'm going to wrap up because I'm terrible at doing these. Thank you all for watching. Do take care, and I hope you're keeping safe in this very turbulent time we're living in. Until next time, look after yourself.